This video covers an example of something you've already seen in previous examples, and that is to take a graph and be able to interpret it or find different things that you know based on how the graph is drawn. So let's take a look at the word problem first and the graph, and then let's make some sense out of these questions. Loretto wants to build a skateboard ramp in the shape of a parabola. She sketches a cross section. This might be something you haven't seen before. Let's underline it. She sketches a cross section of the ramp on a graph. Explain what the various parts of the graph mean. Now, when it says cross section, think about this. We've got this wooden ramp that she's building. Here's where you're going to ride your skateboard. Here's the beginning of the ramp. You're going to go up the ramp and then do whatever tricks you want to do and then come back down again. If it was me, I'd go up this ramp and then fall down and probably break a leg or an arm. But for some of you, you turn around or do some kind of trick and then you go back down the ramp again. So think about this ramp. You just kind of took a saw and cut it exactly down the middle and laid the shape of the ramp on a coordinate grid. We've got an x-axis right here and a y-axis right here. Here's where you enter the ramp. This is the very end or the top edge of the ramp. So the question is, explain what the various parts of the graph mean. So the kind of question you're going to get is, you're going to be asked, what does the vertex tell you on this graph? What's the y-intercept tell you? What's the x-intercept tell you? What are endpoints? What does the endpoint tell you? Or maybe a more general question, what is the domain and the range of this particular graph? Let's go through this together. So first thing is, what does the vertex tell you? Where the vertex is right here. And you can see the vertex is at 0 height and 0 length. There's no length and there's no height. Oh, sorry, one more thing about this graph. Notice the x and the y-axis are labeled. It tells you this represents the length of the ramp in feet, and this represents the height of the ramp in feet. So the vertex is at 0, 0. So what does that tell you? In sentence, it tells you the bottom of the ramp. That's it. And I also put a little description. It's the minimum or lowest point on the parabola. You could also write, well, the vertex tells you that at 0 feet long, the ramp is 0 feet high. So these are all ways to describe what the vertex tells you about the ramp. Now, the vertex on a lot of graphs is not always at 0, 0. So that's just a unique with this particular type of a graph. Okay. What's the y-intercept tell you? Remember, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, which is at 0. So the y-intercept tells you that the height of the ramp, it tells you the height of the ramp when its length is 0 feet. So the y-intercept, remember y, the y-axis tells you height. So obviously the y-intercept tells you some height. What height does it tell you? It tells you the height of the ramp when the length is 0. So what does the x-intercept tell you? Well, the x-intercept is where the graph crosses or touches the x-axis. That's the exact same place, which still happens to be the vertex. But here's what the x-intercept tells you. It tells you the length of the ramp. Remember, x-intercept, x is dealing with the length. So the x-intercept tells you the length of the ramp when its height is 0 feet. When there's no height on the ramp at all, we know the length of the ramp is right here, which happens to be 0. All right, what does the endpoint tell you? Here's our endpoint at 10, 5. All right, now take a look at this. 10 is the x value. 5 is the y value. That means that 10 is telling you the length. And 5 is telling you the height. Because the y-axis is telling you height, the x-axis is telling you length. What's the end point? It tells me the end of the ramp is 10 feet long and 5 feet high. So the end of the ramp is 10 feet long, that's the x value, and 5 feet high. And it doesn't go any higher because Loretta decided to build it only this long and this high. Okay, now the trickier ones. Not so tricky, but just again reminder, what does the domain tell you? Let's take a look at this. Remember, domain is the x value. So I'm going to write here, the x values are domain. Oops, That wasn't written very well. The domain. So take a look. Here's our domain. It doesn't go any farther than 10, and it doesn't go any lower than 0. So our domain is all x values greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 10. Notice it includes 10 and it includes 0. That's why we use the less than or equal to, in this case, less than or equal to. So x is between 0 and 10 and includes 0 and 10. In sentence, that means the minimum value for the ramp length is 0 feet and the maximum value is 10 feet. Alright, the range. Now range, class, is the y-axis. So we're going to try to write here. I'll try to write this if I can. Range. If you hear a truck outside, don't be alarmed. It's just the street cleaner coming by on my street. Okay, the height is the range. So look at our range. Our range doesn't go any higher than 5 and doesn't go any lower than 0. So our range, our possible y values, are greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 5. And in sentence form, the minimum value for the ramp height is 0 feet and the maximum value is 5 feet. So this example class, a good word problem to help you see how you can identify all these parts of the parabola by looking at the graph, and all of them mean something. You can explain in a sentence, and there's lots of ways to explain these, but explain in your own words what each of these things tell you.